Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and these are my thoughts on Who Goes There by John W Campbell. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, another story for my Science Fiction for the Somewhat Hesitant project ticked off. This month, one of my science fiction classic reads was Who Goes There by John W Campbell, which is of course the inspiration for John Carpenter's The Thing. Up front, there'll be some minor spoilers in this, and I'll also be reading a few sections from the story. So if you want to go in totally blind to either the story or the film, if you've not seen it, then feel free to click away now and come back once you're au fait with what I'm talking about. So this is part of this reading project of mine, this Science Fiction for the Somewhat Hesitant. I'm reading some classic science fiction to get into the genre. And this phase of it is great books, great movies. And as I said, this is obviously the inspiration for The Thing. This revolves around a group of researchers at an Antarctic base who discover the ancient frozen body of an alien being at the site of a crashed spaceship. They thaw it out to study it with terrifying results. Seeing as it's Garb August this month, and I've been reading a few things from the Pulp magazine archive on the Internet Archive, I decided to read this in its original form, which is the fabulous Astounding Science Fiction Pulp magazine, the August 1938 issue, where it was published under the name of Don A. Stewart. So I love the film of The Thing, so I was very excited to read this. So what did I think of it? In short, I loved it. This is a really fantastic novella. I think this is shot to one of my all-time favourite kind of short stories or novellas. The atmosphere in it is brilliant. I think that's my favourite thing about it. The opening of the story sets the scene immediately. It creates the atmosphere so well, and I will read the opening couple of paragraphs. The place stank. A queer mingled stench that only the ice-buried cabins of an Antarctic camp know, compounded of reeking human sweat and the heavy fish oil stench of melted seal blubber. An overtone of liniment combated the musty smell of sweat and snow-drenched furs. The acrid odour of burnt cooking fat and the animal, not unpleasant smell of dogs, diluted by time, hung in the air. Lingering odours of machine oil contrasted sharply with the taint of harness dressing and leather. Yet, somehow, through all that reek of human beings and their associates, dogs, machines, and cooking, came another taint. It was a queer, neck-ruffling thing, a faintest suggestion of an odour alien among the smells of industry and life. And it was a life smell. But it came from the thing that lay bound with cord and tarpaulin on the table, dripping slowly, methodically onto the heavy planks, dank and gaunt under the unshielded glare of the electric light. That opening, I just immediately put me in that environment, in that room, and the smells, particularly when you get a really good sense of kind of smells in an environment in a book when they're described really well. I think that really helped me to properly situate myself in that, and immediately from those opening paragraphs I was in on this, absolutely in it. And as well as the environment created sort of inside the research station, Campbell's really good at conveying this kind of harsh, isolated, really kind of threatening environment of Antarctica. He does that really effectively throughout, and I love the way he writes about the weather, temperature, things like that, and how it affects the men, the research station as well. He writes characters similarly convincingly. That they have distinct personalities. They've all got their own jobs at the research station, and they're all working with their own agendas as well. He gives the reader a lot to work with, I think, when it comes to character description as well. Like this description that I'll read of Macready. Moving from the smoke-blued background, Macready was a figure of some forgotten myth, a looming bronze statue that held life and walked. 6 feet 4 inches he stood as he halted beside the table, and with a characteristic glance upward to assure himself of room under the low ceiling beams, straightened. His rough, clashingly orange windproof jacket he still had on, yet on his huge frame it did not seem misplaced. Even here, 4 feet beneath the driftwind that droned across the Antarctic waste above the ceiling, the cold of the frozen continent leaked in and gave meaning to the harshness of the man. And he was bronze, his great red bronze beard, the heavy hair that matched it, the gnarled, corded hands gripping and relaxing on the table planks were bronze. Even the deep sunken eyes beneath the heavy brows were bronzed. Age-resisting endurance of the metal spoke in the cracked, heavy outlines of his face and the mellow tones of the heavy voice. I think the way that Campbell describes physically the men is so closely connected to their character. I think that's what's the strength of it here. Their appearance, their mannerisms, things like that reflect those personalities a lot, and that really helps with building those kind of three-dimensional relatable characters. So you've also got people like Blair being described as bird-like, and a lot of his mannerisms, the way he moves, the way he kind of comes across, has that kind of like slightly twitchy, nervous, bird-like quality about it, as well as his actual appearance. And that's really successful to me. The shifting camaraderie and kind of irritation as well, to being in really close quarters with the other men on the base, where kind of privacy is like virtually non-existent. They gripe about that quite a bit. That shift to an atmosphere of personal isolation within this group, so not being able to trust anyone as the story goes on, not even yourself to some extent, that's handled masterfully as well, as is kind of the breakdown of sanity, really, with some of the characters, some of the characters' experience as the story progresses and things get kind of more and more terrifying. And the tension, suspense created by Campbell is constant, I think. I particularly like the use of the kind of some of the mundane stuff, the day-to-day drudgery of life on the base, the men having to go about their respective kind of professional tasks, but with this threat then like lurking in the background. And I think Campbell's prose style helps there a lot as well. It's a really easy to read prose style, but it's really rich in detail, and it really sucked me in. So yeah, the overall shape of the plot is great. It has a really, really good pace to it. And it alternates perfectly, in my opinion, between those kind of tense, mysterious, ramping sections where the thing is reanimating and then later on taking over the men. And between that and more of the kind of talky discussions where the science is at play. I was glued to both sorts of exposition, really. And I had to actively slow down my reading as well, because I just wanted to kind of race through it because I was so enthralled by it. Speaking of the scientific stuff, I really liked the hypothesizing, the kind of arguments, that kind of discussions, debates, if you like, between the different characters, each with their own theories on what's going on, based on their own scientific backgrounds, their own scientific specialities. And all of the science stuff was really easy to follow. It came across as believable in the most part, but it was accessible, it was interesting, and as I say, I didn't get lost in any of it at all. I think the best thing on the ideas side of things, though, other than the science, the scientific side of it, is the exploration of doubt and mistrust that the events of the story, kind of suddenly bring to this dynamic of, sort of tightly knit band of characters who are all used to living cheek by jowl. They get on each other's nerves. The lack of privacy irritates them, but they generally seem to get on quite well, maybe by necessity, but they do seem to have a decent rapport. But then all of a sudden they can't trust each other. And some are driven insane by what's going on, some are driven to murder, to violence, but they're also driven by the need to find a way to identify who among them has been replaced by an imitation, that who is no longer human amongst them. And so they still have to work together in order to come up with a solution. And it makes for a really interesting group dynamic. So as you can tell, I really did love this one. This was way exceeded expectations. My expectations were high anyway, and this definitely exceeded it. So let's have a look at my rating for this then. I will pop it up on screen. So for character, I've given it an 8. As I say, really good, relatable characters who all worked really well together as an ensemble. Really good character dynamics. Atmosphere is a 10 out of 10. Outstanding atmosphere. One of the best, most evocative, most tense stories I've read in a while, and that's bearing in mind that I already knew the general plot from watching The Thing, the movie. Writing, I've given a 9 to. Excellent prose style. I really like Campbell's prose in this. Really sucked me in. Great vocabulary, great rhythm to the writing, really accessible and compelling. Plot, as I say, it's got great pacing for me, and it kept me enthralled from start to finish. Ideas is a 9, great science, great discussion of trust, doubt, isolation, that kind of thing. And my enjoyment of it has to be a 10. I absolutely loved it. So if I add all of those scores up then and divide by 6, I get a total of 9.17 out of 10. I will round that down to a 9 out of 10, and that is, of course, a 5 stars on Storygraph. So yeah, really, really impressed this one. I will read this time and time again. Okay, a quick note on The Thing then by John Carpenter, one of my favourite science fiction / horror films. It sticks pretty close to the original story, actually. The plot does differ, certainly towards the end, but that's not a criticism of it. I think, they are absolutely their own things, the story and the film, and I like them for both kind of I like them equally, I think, for both similar and different reasons. The tension, again, the film, I think, is brilliant in terms of the tension that it creates, similarly to the story, to the novella. That's what I love about it. And I really enjoyed the updated kind of renditions of the characters as well. In the film, it is different in that respect, but I think it's it still maintains that kind of group dynamic that you find in the story. The atmosphere, I think, shines again. This tense, isolated, harsh, threatening environment, and this sense of mistrust, doubt, etc. between the characters. That's where both the story and the film excel. One of my favourite things about the film, though, is something very specific to the medium, and that's practical effects. I love the practical effects in The Thing. The Norris thing in particular is brilliant. Stuff of nightmares, but brilliant. But I love the general kind of design, production of the effects, and the general design and production of the whole movie, to be honest. It just really brings it all to life. So there we go, folks. Those are my thoughts on both Who Goes There, the novella by John W Campbell, and The Thing by John Carpenter. I would be interested to know from anyone who's read any other Campbell stories, what else of his work might you recommend? I know very little about him as a writer and where to go next, and I think I would like to try some more John W Campbell short stories. So if anybody's got any favourites other than this one, then do let me know. Also, as I was trawling the Internet Archive for Garb August reading materials, I came across the novelisation for The Thing by Alan Dean Foster. That is available for free on Internet Archive. So I'm definitely going to have to read that one at some point as well. I've got it downloaded as an ebook from Internet Archive, and I thought about reading it next week for week 4 of Garb August for Novelisations Week, but I think my dance card might be a little bit full this month for that. So I think I'm going to save that for November, when it's time for Novelisation November, which is created by Andrew from It Came From The Page. I think The Thing would be a perfect one to put in my reading list for that. So yes, so there we go. That will do from me today. Thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, do drop your thoughts in the comments below. It's always lovely to hear from you. Do let me know if you've read Who Goes There and what you thought of it. I will be back on Sunday with my weekly vlog, so I do hope you'll join me for that then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.